In today's guide, we will take a closer look at the armor stat for units and heroes in Total War Warhammer 3. I'll be explaining what exactly armor does and how it's calculated. But if you have any questions regarding armor that I don't answer in this video, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I will do my very best to answer them. With that said, I think this video will answer most of them, so let's just get right into it. First of all, you can see how much armor a unit has by looking for the, armor icon on the unit info card near the top. Armor decides how much of a reduction in missile fire and melee attack damage a character or unit can have. However, there are a few things that armor cannot protect you against. These things are explosive missile fire damage, such as catapult-like units, impact melee attack damage, such as a cavalry-like unit charge bonus damage, armor piercing damage, as the name implies, pierces through the armor. And finally, any combination of the above exceptions, for example, explosive armor piercing missile damage. Now, of course, magic damage is also not affected by armor, but I figure most of you already know that since that's magic damage and not physical damage. In any case, in general, armor just affects how much damage you take from missile and melee attack sources. However, armor does not decide whether or not you get hit by an attack. That is governed by the melee defense and melee attack. So armor only comes into play if an attack hits and deals damage. Now, the amount of damage you take from that melee attack or missile is affected by armor, but how exactly does it work? Well, let me try to explain it as simply as possible. So, getting started, we have Unit A that attacks Unit B for 100 damage. This scenario, Unit A has 0 armor piercing damage, but obviously every unit in the game has just a little bit amount of armor piercing damage, so this is just for an example to make it easy to understand. Unit B that is getting attacked has 50 armor. So, the first thing that happens is that the game, so to speak, rolls a dice to decide how much of the damage is blocked by the armor. Now, that dice roll is between 50% and 100% of the armor value of 50. So that means anywhere between 50% and 100% of the armor value can be rolled, but that is completely random. So let's say that Unit B gets lucky and they roll 100% of their armor value. Since their armor value is 50, they are gonna be blocking 50 damage from the 100 damage attack, meaning that Unit B would take a total of 50 damage. If Unit B had gotten unlucky and rolled 50% instead of 100%, it would only block 25 damage and take a total of 75 damage. So just to reiterate and make it super clear, the first example, we roll 100% of our armor value, which was 50, meaning we block 50 damage. In the second example, where we got unlucky and rolled 50% of our armor value, we block 25 damage because 50% of 50 armor is 25. Now, as I mentioned before, every unit in the game has some kind of armor piercing damage. It can be very, very small, it can be very high, but some amount will always go through. Where the math and formula can get even more complicated is when we also take into account any physical resistances, ward save, and missile resistances that a unit might have. If you're looking to understand how much damage a unit will take from every single attack, well, then I'm afraid to say it's actually basically impossible. But you could always take 75% of your unit's armor value and compare it to the enemy's weapon strength, and from there get a rough idea of how much damage you'll take on average from every attack. If you are gonna do that, a thing to keep in mind is that any resistances, such as physical resistance, is taken into account after armor. So if we take the example from before of Unit B taking 75 damage, but this time they also have 20% physical resistance, it'll be 20% of 75, bringing the damage down to 60. On top of that, an attack will always deal at least 1 damage no matter what. So even if you somehow got a unit up to 1000 armor, if they get hit by 5000 attacks from zombies, they will still die. Now, if you want to get really nitty gritty into the math, I would suggest that you go to the Total War Warhammer wiki and look their examples and formulas. I could do that for you here, but I honestly don't think this will be a thing that many of you will spend your time on, because once again, there are some RNG involved here, because there is the roll between 50% of your armor value and 100% of the armor value, which makes it really hard to always figure out how much damage you take. It's only an estimation. Now, for rounding off this video, I want to talk about something that I think will be helpful for a lot of newer players or people who are not gonna do all the math that I just talked about. Specifically, we're gonna take a look at what is seen as a good amount of armor and what is a bad amount of armor. And let me make this clear that I did not go through every unit in the game, looked at their armor, put it all together, and then calculated an average. Instead, I took the numbers from our good friend Sirkovich, who gave his thoughts on what was bad armor, good armor, and great armor in a video a while back. So yeah, I did not come up with these numbers, I did not deserve credit for coming up with them, I'm just here to further spread the information. Starting off with our light armored units, these usually come in at around 30 armor or below, and this is seen as pretty low to bad armor. The armor value is so small that even if the unit gets the lucky roll of 100% of their armor value, it will barely make a difference. However, having this low armor is usually only for very early infantry, mages, or ranged units that have this amount. On top of that, lots of units later on in the game with low amounts of armor also has some kind of benefit, either a ward save, missile resistance, or just a physical resistance. Moving on to the good territory of armor, we are between 30 and up to 70 armor. It is now at a point where some real damage can potentially get blocked by the armor. You will usually see this armor value on mid to high tier infantry, mid tier monsters, and cavalry. At 70 plus armor, we're gonna start to give some units near immunity to the non-armor piercing damage, and in general, any unit with 70 plus armor is very good. As an example, let's say a unit has 100 armor and they were fighting a unit of Empire swordsmen. The unit with 100 armor would on average take 8 damage per hit, despite the swordsman having 21 weapon damage. That is calculated from the 7 of the 21 damage being armor piercing, and 1 damage will always go through no matter what, so we get 8 damage. That is a damage reduction of nearly 66% and 99.99% if you don't look at the armor piercing damage. So that is why a heavily armored unit going into a very low damaging infantry can basically kill them for absolutely free. That said, any unit with 70 plus armor might also be slow or very expensive, such as a big dragon or heavy infantry. And while taking less damage is always great, it is an issue of course if they can't catch up to whatever they're trying to kill. But that's a talk for another video. And with that, I have covered all I wanted to talk about when it comes to armor. As I said at the beginning, if you still have some questions, leave them in the comments below. And while you're down there in the comments section, consider hitting the like and subscribe button for more guides and general tips on how to play Total War Warhammer 3. I hope you found it all a bit useful, despite it being a little bit confusing with the math, but hopefully you guys are smart enough to figure out that for yourself. In the next video, I want to take a closer look at resistances and modifiers while giving you some examples of combat. While you wait for that video, why not check out these short parody videos I have done on a few of the other Warhammer factions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.